James Butler Hickok, better known as Wild Bill. He was a folk hero, a wagon master, a soldier, a spy, a scout, an actor, a showman, a lawman, a gambler, and a gunfighter. Some of the stories about him are true. Some are fabricated. And some of the stories that he supposedly told about himself are clearly fictitious. But they continue to add to his legend and his fame. Howdy, I'm Bob Terry. Thank you for joining us for the Old West. James was born in Homer, Illinois, May 27, 1837, to William Alonzo Hickok, a farmer and an abolitionist, and Polly Butler Hickok. He was the fourth of 6 children, and it's said that his father used their family home as a station for the Underground Railroad. James was raised on a farm in northern Illinois at a time when lawlessness and vigilante activity ran rampant. His father died in 1852, when James was only 15 years old. James Butler was a good shot from a young age and was recognized locally as an outstanding marksman with a pistol. Photographs of him make him appear to have dark hair, but Hickok's hair is said to have been red. In 1855, at the age of 18, he fled Illinois, following a fight with Charles Hudson. During the fight, they both fell into a canal. Each thought mistakenly that he had killed the other. Hickok moved to Leavenworth in Kansas Territory and joined Jim Lane's Free State Army. They were Jayhawkers. While a Jayhawker, he met 12-year-old William Cody, and their paths would cross several times in years to come. Hickok had several nicknames: Duck Bill for his long nose and protruding lips, and he was also known as Shanghai Bill because of his height and slim build. And he was also called Dutch Bill. From 1858, he started using his deceased father's name, William, and he was also known as William Hickok during the Civil War. Most newspapers referred to him as William Hickok until 1869. He was arrested while using the name Hickok in 1865. He afterward resumed using his given name, James Hickok. Military records after 1865 list him as Hickok, but note that he was also known as Hickok. In several articles, his name was misspelled as Hitchcock. In 1857, Hickok claimed a 160-acre tract in Johnson County, Kansas. On March 22, 1858, he was elected one of the first constables of Monticello Township. In 1859, he joined the Russell, Majors, and Waddle Freight Company, the parent company of the Pony Express. In 1860, he was badly injured by a bear while driving a freight team from Independence, Missouri to Santa Fe, New Mexico. According to Hickok's account, he found the road blocked by a cinnamon bear and its 2 cubs. Getting out of the wagon, he approached the bear and fired a shot into its head, but the bullet ricocheted off its skull. This infuriated the bear, and it attacked, crushing Hickok with its body. Hickok managed to fire another shot, wounding the bear's paw. The bear then grabbed his arm and its mouth, but Hickok was able to grab his knife and slash the bear's throat, killing it. Hickok was severely injured, with a crushed chest, shoulder, and arm. He was bedridden for 4 months before being sent to Rock Creek Station in the Nebraska Territory. There he was to work as a stable hand while he recovered. The freight company had built the stagecoach stop along the Oregon Trail near Fairbury, Nebraska, on land purchased from David McCannels. On July 12, 1861, McCannels went to the Rock Creek Station office to demand an overdue property payment from Horace Wellman, the station manager. McCannels reportedly threatened Wellman. Now, there are many different accounts as to what happened that day. McCannels was said to be a quarrelsome and dangerous man, a former sheriff of Watauga County, North Carolina. He was known as a local bully and was said to have argued with Hickok before. McCandless had leased the cabin and well on the east side of Rock Creek to the Russell, Waddle, and Majors Freight Company to be used as a relay station for the Overland Stage Company and the Pony Express mail service. The company had hired Horace G. Wellman as the station agent. In April or early May 1861, 23-year-old James Butler Hickok arrived at the station to be a stock tender. It is said that he quickly became a target of harassment by McCandless, who teased Hickok about his slight build and his long nose and protruding lips. It is also reported that McCandless and Hickok were friends and that no quarrel between them ever existed. It's said that the freight company was behind on paying its payments to McCandless, so on July 12, 1861, McCandless went to the station with his 12-year-old son Monroe, his cousin James Woods, and another man named James Gordon. McCandless demanded to see Wellman about the overdue payment. There are several different versions of what happened next. In some versions, McCandless was met by Wellman's wife and Hickok at the door, who told him that Wellman was either unavailable or unwilling to see him. Other accounts suggest that Wellman himself was present for the confrontation. At some point, either by invitation or by force, McCandless entered the cabin, and there was an argument. McCandless was then shot. Woods and Gordon, like McCandless, were said to be unarmed and attempted to flee, but Hickok stepped from the cabin and wounded both with his pistols. The two men were then killed by other members of the relay station. At the time, Hickok was not reported as wounded. During the attack, McCandless' son Monroe said he escaped by running through a dry creek bed. In another account that was published around 1882 by S.C. Jenkins and S.J. Alexander, who had arrived at the ranch within 2 hours of the shootout taking place and before the bodies were removed, according to them, David McCandless' brother James was a Southern sympathizer and had tried to persuade Hickok to join them and turn over the stage company's stock. Hickok had refused, and James threatened to kill him. Later that afternoon, David and the others arrived with the intention of carrying out that threat. In 1883, D.M. Kelsey published Our Pioneer Heroes and Their Daring Deeds, which contained a biography for Wild Bill, supposedly based on Hickok's own words. In this account, he says Hickok claimed he had killed 6 of the 10 members of the McCandless gang, who had rushed in after using a log to batter the station door down. 2 of these he claimed to have killed in a knife fight after he was wounded. He is quoted as saying, "I remember that one of them struck me with his gun, and I got hold of a knife, and then I got kind of wild-like, and it was all cloudy, and I struck savage blows following the devils up from one side of the room to the other, and into the corners, striking and slashing, until I knew everyone was dead." The remaining 4 attackers then fled, and Hickok picked up a rifle and shot one dead. Another died later of his wounds. The dead, according to Hickok, included David McCandless' brother James and Jack Leroy McCandless. However, according to records, Jack Leroy was still alive in 1883 and was living in Florence, Colorado. An account by Monroe McCandless appeared in the Fairbury Journal on September 25, 1930. Monroe said that he had gone with his father to the station to collect money and that they had been unarmed. He stated, "Probably the motive for killing was fear. Father had told Mrs. Wellman to tell her husband to come out. The Wellmans were the folks who lived there and kept the station. She said he wouldn't, and Father said if he wouldn't come out, he would go in and drag him out. I think rather than be manhandled, he killed Father." The following morning, the Helvey brothers, Frank, Thomas, and Jasper, arrived at Rock Creek Station, gathered up the bodies of McCandless, Woods, and Gordon, and buried them. McCandless and Woods in a wood box in one grave, and Gordon in a blanket in another. Hickok told Frank Helvey that they killed these men in self-defense. Frank Helvey said they found the body of McCandless lying on the ground where he fell backwards out of the cabin. They found Woods around the corner of the cabin with several gunshots in his body and his head crushed. and Gordon about 80 rods south of the station filled with buckshot and no guns near any of them, giving support to Monroe's account that there was no fight in the cabin or outside and that 3 unarmed men were killed. Buffalo Bill Cody's visit to Major Israel McCrate at the Wigwam in Du Bois, Pennsylvania on June 22, 1908, is a notable event in history. Monroe McCannels was there as McCrate's house guest. Monroe told Buffalo Bill about his father being shot by Hickok. Monroe McCannels stated that at the age of 12, he was standing by his father when Hickok shot him dead while behind a curtain. This was the first time Cody had heard this alternative account of the incident and declared that he would include this story in his autobiography. This has made the McCannels event a subject of controversy and debate by Old West historians. This savage incident was one of the first that contributed to Hickok's reputation as a gunfighter and a man to be feared. Years later, Harper's Monthly sensationalized this event. According to the writer, Hickok single-handedly killed 9 desperados, horse thieves, murderers, and regular cutthroats, known as the McCannels Gang, in the greatest one-man gunfight in history. The story goes on to say Hickok was armed with a pistol, a rifle, and a bowie knife, and he himself was shot 11 times. Whatever happened at the station changed Hickok's direction in life, and he would be referred to as Wild Bill from this point on. James McCannels filed for an arrest warrant for Dutch Bill and the others, charging them with murder. The case was brought to trial, but the judge would not permit Monroe McCannels to testify, even though he had been subpoenaed to. So the court heard only the account given by the station employees. The judge ruled Hickok and the others had acted in self-defense. The DeWitt Times-News was told by the foreman of the company stations. At the time of this affair, I was at a station further west and reached this station just as Wild Bill was getting ready to go to Beatrice for his trial. He wanted me to go with him, and as we started on our way, imagine my surprise and uncomfortable feeling when he announced his intention of stopping at the McCannels' home. I would have rather been somewhere else, but Bill stopped. He told Mrs. McCannels he was sorry he had killed her man. Then he took out $35 and gave it to her, saying, "This is all I have. Sorry, I do not have more to give you." We drove on to Beatrice, and at the trial, his plea was self-defense. No one appeared against him, and he was cleared. The trial did not last more than 15 minutes. In April 1861, Wild Bill became a teamster for the Union Army in Sedalia, and soon became a wagon master. But in September 1862, he was discharged. After being discharged, he joined General James Henry Lane's Kansas Brigade, and Buffalo Bill Cody was now serving Lane's brigade as a scout. Hickok became a detective in 1863 in southwest Missouri. His work included discovering troops in uniform who were drinking while on duty, confirming hotel liquor licenses, and tracking down those who owed money to the Union Army. Buffalo Bill stated that he saw Hickok disguised as a Confederate officer in Missouri in 1864. In early 1865, Hickok was hired as a scout by General John B. Sanborn. In June, he mustered out and went to Springfield, where he made his living by gambling. Springfield is where Hickok and another gambler named Davis Tutt met. Even though they had served on opposite sides during the war, they became friends and spent time gambling together. As a result of their playing cards together, Hickok owed Tutt $25. So Tutt took Bill's watch for collateral. This embarrassed Wild Bill, and he warned Tutt not to humiliate him by wearing it in public. Now, because of the warning, to not wear the watch would suggest that Tutt was afraid of Hickok. Tutt wore the watch, and when Hickok saw this, on July 21st, 1865, the two men faced off in the town square of Springfield. At about 75 yards away, They each stood sideways and drew their pistols and fired. Thus, the fast-draw legend of gunfighters in the Old West was born. Tut's shot missed Hickok, but Hickok's bullet went through Tut's heart. Davis called out, "Boys, I'm killed." Then he collapsed, and he died. The gunfight has since become one of the best known in the Old West. The gunfight on the square in Springfield made Wild Bill Hickok famous. After a few days, Hickok was arrested for murder. The charge was reduced to manslaughter, and Wild Bill was released on $2,000 bail. On August 3, 1865, he stood trial. After all the testimony, Judge Sempronius H. Boyd told the jury they could not find Hickok acted in self-defense if they thought he could have reasonably refrained from the gunfight. But if they felt the threat of danger was unavoidable, they could apply the unwritten law of the fair fight, and Hickok could be acquitted. The jury voted to clear Hickok, which resulted in much public criticism of the verdict. Later, Hickok gave an interview to Colonel George Ward Nichols, the journalist credited as the creator of the Wild Bill Hickok legend. The interview was published in Harper's New Monthly magazine titled Wild Bill Hitchcock. The story told of the hundreds of men whom Hickok had killed and other exaggerated or fabricated adventurous deeds. The article upset some in places where Hickok was known, and several Western newspapers disputed Nichols's sensational stories. Hickok ran for city marshal of Springfield in September of 1865. He came in second, so he left Springfield and was recommended for deputy federal marshal at Fort Riley, Kansas. This was during the Indian Wars. During this time, Hickok sometimes served as a scout for General George Armstrong Custer's 7th Cavalry. Hickok recruited 6 Native Americans and 3 cowboys to accompany him to Niagara Falls in 1865. There, they put on an outdoor show titled The Daring Buffalo Chasers of the Plains. The show was outdoors, so he couldn't get people to pay to watch, which made the event a financial failure. Included in the exhibition were 6 buffalo, a monkey, and a bear. Disaster struck during one performance when a buffalo did not perform as it was supposed to. This made Hickok frustrated, and he fired his pistol into the air. This angered the buffalo and panicked audience members, causing the animals to break free of their wire fencing, and they chased audience members. Some of the audience got trampled. It was rumored that Bill was a hater of Indians. This does not seem to ring true, though, because of his being willing and able to hire Indians in his show. The rumors were probably just more fabrications to enhance his reputation as a scout and Indian fighter. While working as a scout at Fort Harker in Kansas on May 11, 1867, Hickok was attacked by a group of Indians. He shot and killed 2 of his attackers, and the rest fled. In July, Hickok told a newspaper reporter that he had led several soldiers in pursuing some Indians who had killed 4 men near the fort. He said they had returned with 5 prisoners and killed 10 of the marauders. Witnesses confirmed that most of the story was true. The party had set out to find the murderers of the 4 men, but the group had returned to the fort empty-handed. Newspapers reported in December of 1867 that Hickok was a resident of Hays City, Kansas. He then acquired the job of Deputy U.S. Marshal. In late March 1868, he arrested 11 Union Army deserters that were charged with stealing government property. Hickok was instructed to take them to Topeka for trial. He requested a military escort from Fort Hays. He was sent William F. Cody, a sergeant, and 5 privates, arriving in Topeka on April 2nd. Then Hickok remained in Hays through August 1868. Hickok was in Lincoln County, Kansas in early September and was hired as a scout for the 10th Cavalry. Also in early September, Hickok went to rescue some cattlemen in the Bayou Creek Basin who were surrounded by Indians, and he was wounded in the foot. In October, the 10th Regiment arrived at Fort Lyon in Colorado, remaining there for the rest of 1868. Hickok returned to Hays in July of '69, and in a special election held in late August, he was elected City Marshal of Hays and Sheriff of Ellis County, Kansas. This must have been a tough job because within the last 18 months, 3 other sheriffs had quit. Records indicate Hickok was acting as sheriff before he was elected. A newspaper reported that he arrested someone on August 18th, and the commander of Fort Hays wrote a letter on August 21st praising Hickok for his work in apprehending deserters. Hickok killed 2 men in September of 1869. The first one was Bill Mulvey, who was rampaging through town drunk and shooting up mirrors and bottles in saloons. People told Mulvey to be careful because Hickok was sheriff. Mulvey scoffed and stated that he had come to town to kill Wild Bill. When he saw Hickok, he leveled his rifle at him. Wild Bill motioned to the crowd behind Mulvey and yelled, "Don't shoot him in the back. He's drunk." Mulvey wheeled around to see who might be trying to shoot him in the back, and it was at this moment that Hickok shot him through the temple. The second man was on September 27th, Samuel Strawhun, a disorderly cowboy causing trouble at 1 a.m. in a saloon. When Hickok and his deputy Peter Lanahan arrived, Strawhun defied Hickok, and Hickok shot Strawhun through the head. Hickok stated he had tried to restore order. There was a coroner's inquest into Strawhun's death, with witnesses against Hickok, but the jury found the shooting justifiable. The regular county election was held on November 2nd, 1869. Hickok was running as an independent and lost to Peter Lanahan, his deputy, who was running as a Democrat. This must have not set well with Hickok or Lanahan, because each kept their former positions of sheriff and deputy, respectively. On December 9th, Hickok and Lanahan both served legal papers on a J.B. McIntosh, accusing him of irregularities and misconduct during the election. And the newspapers acknowledged that Hickok had guardianship of Hays City. On July 17, 1870, Hickok was attacked in a saloon by 2 troopers from the 7th Cavalry, a Jeremiah Lonergan and a John Kyle. Lonergan pinned Hickok to the floor while Kyle pulled his pistol and held it to Hickok's ear and pulled the trigger. The pistol misfired. This gave Hickok the opportunity to pull his own pistol. He shot Lonergan in the knee. He shot Kyle twice. Then he quickly jumped through a window, armed himself with a Winchester, and found a good place to hold up, just in case revenge-seeking troopers came to town looking for him. Well, Lonergan recovered. Kyle died the next day. This true exploit was once again something that writers sensationalized. One writer claiming that Hickok had been in a fight in a saloon with 15 troopers, killing 3 of them and being shot himself 7 times. And that General Phil Sheridan had ordered Hickok be brought in dead or alive. And that Tom Custer had taken troops to Hays City for revenge to kill Hickok. Hickok was not reelected at the next election. Lanahan took over for Wild Bill, and on the night of July 16, 1871, Lanahan went to stop a fight in Henry Dog Kelly's saloon. When Lanahan tried to stop the ruckus, he was shot twice. He died 2 days later. Bill became Marshal of Abilene, Kansas on April 15, 1871. He replaced Tom Bear River Smith, who had been killed on November 2, 1870. In early 1871, John Wesley Hardin arrived in Abilene at the end of a cattle drive. Hardin was on the run and was a well-known gunfighter, having been reported as killing at least 27 men. In his 1895 autobiography published after his death, Hardin claimed to have been befriended by Hickok, the newly elected town marshal, after he had disarmed the marshal using the road agent's spin. Hickok later said he did not know that Wesley Clemens was Hardin's alias, and that he was a wanted outlaw. He told Clemens to stay out of trouble in Abilene. On August 6, 1871, Hardin, his cousin Gip Clements, and a rancher friend named Charles Cougar stayed the night at the American House Hotel after an evening of drinking and gambling. Clements and Hardin shared a room, and Cougar stayed in the adjacent room. Sometime during the night, Hardin was awakened by loud snoring coming from Cougar's room. He first shouted several times for the man to roll over, and then, being irritated, fired several shots through the wall. Cougar was struck in the head by one of the bullets, and he was killed. Hardin had violated an ordinance prohibiting firing a gun within the city limits. Realizing this, half-dressed and still drunk, he and Clements exited through a second-story window onto the roof of the hotel, just in time to see Hickok arrive with 4 policemen. Hardin wrote in his autobiography, "Now I believed that if Wild Bill found me in a defenseless condition, he would take no explanation, but would kill me to add to his reputation." Hardin claimed later he had merely wanted the man to stop snoring in the room next door, and that he had not meant to kill the man. The Bull's Head Saloon in Abilene had been established by gamblers Ben Thompson and Phil Coe. The two men had a crude picture painted on the side of their saloon to attract attention. It did just that. Citizens of the town complained and wanted Hickok to do something about it. Hickok asked Thompson and Coe to remove the painting. They refused. So Hickok altered it himself. This infuriated Coe and Thompson. Hickok was standing off a crowd during a street brawl on October 5, 1871. He saw Phil Coe fire a pistol twice. Wild Bill told Coe he was going to arrest him for firing a pistol within the city limits. Coe claimed that he was shooting at a stray dog, but then turned his gun on Hickok, who instantly fired at Coe, killing him. Bill then caught a glimpse of someone else running towards him and quickly shot, accidentally shooting and killing his deputy marshal, Mike Williams, who was coming to help Bill. This event haunted Hickok for the rest of his life. There is another account of the Coe shootout. Theophilus Little, the mayor of Abilene and owner of the town's lumber yard, recorded his time in Abilene by writing in a notebook, which was ultimately given to the Abilene Historical Society. Writing in 1911, he detailed his admiration of Hickok and included a paragraph on the shooting that differs considerably from the reported account. Phil Coe was from Texas, ran the Bull's Head, a saloon and gambling den, sold whiskey and men's souls, as vile a character as I ever met. For some cause, Wild Bill incurred Coe's hatred, and he vowed to secure the death of the marshal. Not having the courage to do it himself, he one day filled about 200 cowboys with whiskey, intending to get them into trouble with Wild Bill, hoping that they would get to shooting and in the melee shoot the marshal. But Coe reckoned without his host. Wild Bill had learned of the scheme and cornered Coe, had his 2 pistols drawn on Coe. Just as he pulled the trigger, one of the policemen rushed around the corner between Coe and the pistols, and both bullets entered his body, killing him instantly. In an instant, he pulled the triggers again, sending 2 bullets into Coe's abdomen. Coe lived a day or 2. Then, whirling with his 2 guns drawn on the drunken crowd of cowboys, "And now, do any of you fellows want the rest of these bullets?" Not a word was uttered. Soon after the accidental killing of Deputy Williams, Hickok was relieved of his duties as marshal. There were also several other claims of misconduct and unjustifiable shootings. In 1873, Buffalo Bill and Texas Jack invited Wild Bill to join their acting company. They had already had much success. It is said that Hickok did not enjoy acting and sometimes hid behind scenery. It said during one show, when the spotlight focused on him, he shot it out. He was released from the group after a few months. In 1876, Hickok was diagnosed by a doctor in Kansas City, Missouri, with glaucoma. At only 39 years old, his health and marksmanship were declining. Agnes Thatcher owned a circus that visited Abilene, Kansas in 1871, and Agnes met the town marshal of Abilene, Wild Bill Hickok. In 1873, her circus was performing in Rochester, New York. Coincidentally, Wild Bill was there too, in the Wild West show with Buffalo Bill and Texas Jack. Agnes continued to operate the circus until her daughter Emma eloped with Gilbert Robinson of the famous John Robinson Circus. Then Agnes sold her circus. Agnes's husband, Bill Lake Thatcher, had been murdered in 1869 by a man he was evicting from the circus, who had entered without paying. Wild Bill and Agnes apparently kept up correspondence, but it wasn't until February 1876 that they saw each other again. Agnes, returning from a visit to San Francisco, stopped to visit friends in Cheyenne. Hickok was in town, preparing to leave for the gold fields of the Black Hills. On March 5th, 1876, in Cheyenne, Wyoming territory, Mrs. Agnes Lake Thatcher and James Butler Hickok were married. The Cheyenne Daily Sun, in its first issue, March 8, 1876, noted, "Wild Bill of Western fame has conquered numerous Indians, outlaws, bears, and buffaloes, but a charming widow has stolen the magic wand. The scepter has departed, and he is as meek and gentle as a lamb. In other words, he has shuffled off the coil of bachelorhood." Following the wedding, the couple honeymooned in Cincinnati for 2 weeks. Agnes stayed on to care for her daughter Emma, who was about to deliver her first and only child, Daisy Robinson. Hickok returned by train to Cheyenne, in time to complete arrangements for his trip into the South Dakota goldfields with Charlie Utter's wagon train. Bill wrote letters to Agnes from time to time. In the last one he wrote, "Pet, we will have a home yet. Then we will be so happy." Another which read in part, "Agnes, darling, if such should be we never meet again, while firing my last shot, I will gently breathe the name of my wife, Agnes, and with wishes even for my enemies, I will make the plunge and try to swim to the other shore." Martha Jane Canary, Calamity Jane. She claimed in her autobiography that she was married to Hickok and had divorced him so he could be free to marry Agnes, but no records have ever been found to support this. Wild Bill and Calamity probably met for the first time after she was released from the guardhouse in Fort Laramie and joined the wagon train going to Deadwood. The wagon train arrived in Deadwood in July 1876. Jane confirmed this in an 1896 newspaper interview, but she claimed she had been hospitalized with an illness rather than in the guardhouse. Jack McCall was drunk at the bar at Nuttall and Mann's Saloon in Deadwood on August 1st, 1876. When one of the players dropped out of a card game that included Wild Bill, McCall took his place. McCall lost several hands and was soon broke. Hickok offered McCall money to buy breakfast and gave him advice that he shouldn't play anymore until he could cover his losses. McCall accepted the money, but it was reported that he obviously felt insulted. On August 2nd, another poker game was going on at the saloon, but this time Hickok had his back to a door. Wild Bill was in the practice of always sitting in a corner so he could watch the door. It is a mystery why on this occasion he strayed from this cautious habit. A resentful and drunken McCall entered behind Wild Bill and shot Hickok in the back of the head with a .45 pistol, shouting, "Take that!" Hickok died instantly. McCall ran from the saloon and attempted to steal a horse, but the excited animal bucked him off. McCall was soon found hiding in the back of a local butcher shop and apprehended. Charlie Utter, Hickok's friend and companion, claimed Hickok's body and placed a notice in the local newspaper, the Black Hills Pioneer, which read, "Died in Deadwood, Black Hills, August 2nd, 1876, from the effects of a pistol shot. J.B. Hickok, Wild Bill, formerly of Cheyenne, Wyoming. Funeral services will be held at Charlie Utter's camp on Thursday afternoon, August 3rd, 1876, at 3 o'clock p.m. All are respectfully invited to attend." Almost the entire town attended the funeral, and Charlie Utter had Hickok buried with a wooden grave marker reading, Wild Bill, J.B. Hickok, killed by the assassin Jack McCall in Deadwood, Black Hills, August 2nd, 1876. Pard, we will meet again in the happy hunting ground, to part no more. Goodbye. Colorado Charlie C.H. Utter. An impromptu court was called to order for McCall, with the prosecution, defense, and jury made up of local miners and businessmen. On trial the next day in McDaniel's Theater, McCall claimed his actions were in retribution for Hickok having killed his brother years ago in Abilene. Amazingly, after 2 hours, McCall was found not guilty and was set free. The verdict brought the Black Hills pioneer to write, "Should it ever be our misfortune to kill a man, we would simply ask that our trial may take place in some of the mining camps of these hills." McCall was understandably afraid, so he left and traveled to Wyoming Territory, where he bragged over and over again about killing Wild Bill Hickok in a fair gunfight. The incident drew attention from Wyoming authorities, who refused to recognize McCall's acquittal, on grounds that the court in Deadwood had no legal jurisdiction, because Deadwood was not under a legally constituted court system. They argued that McCall could be tried for murder again. The federal court in Yankton, Dakota Territory agreed and declared that double jeopardy did not apply and set a date for a retrial. McCall was tried again in Yankton for Hickok's murder and was quickly found guilty. After spending almost 3 months in jail, he was hanged on March 1st, 1877, at 24 years old. It also appears while Jack McCall had several sisters, he had never even had a brother. McCall was buried in Sacred Heart Cemetery in Yankton County, South Dakota, a cemetery which was moved in 1881. When McCall's body was exhumed, it was found to still have the noose around its neck. Hickok is known to have fatally shot 6 men and is suspected of having killed a 7th. He was buried in the Ingleside Cemetery, Deadwood's original graveyard. This cemetery filled quickly, and in 1879, on the 3rd anniversary of his original burial, Charlie Utter paid to move Hickok's remains to the new Mount Moriah Cemetery. Charlie supervised the move. When Hickok's body was exhumed, it was discovered while perfectly preserved, he had been imperfectly embalmed. As a result, calcium carbonate from the surrounding soil had replaced the flesh, causing petrification. Joseph McClintock, one of the workers, wrote a detailed description of the event. He used a cane to tap the body, face, and head, and found no soft tissue anywhere. He noted that the sound was similar to tapping a brick wall, and believed the remains to weigh more than 400 pounds, which made it difficult for the remains to be carried to the new site. The original wooden grave marker was moved to the new site, but by 1891 it had been whittled away by souvenir hunters, so it was replaced with a statue. Souvenir hunters chipped this marker away as well, and it was replaced in 1902 by a life-size sandstone sculpture of Hickok, and was then enclosed in a cage for protection. This statue was also badly defaced. A new bronze copy of the original statue was created by David R. Young in 2001 and placed over Wild Bill's grave. Hickok was playing 5-card stud when he was shot. He was holding 2 pairs, black aces and black 8s, his up cards. The identity of his hole card is the subject of debate. In 1877, Agnes came to Deadwood and made arrangements for a fence around Wild Bill's grave. Hickok's stepdaughter, Emma, was a circus performer and sometimes used the Hickok name. She performed with several circuses, including with Buffalo Bill. James Butler Hickok's favorite guns were a pair of .36 caliber Colt 1851 Navy model cap and ball revolvers. They were nickel-plated with ivory grips and were nicely engraved with J.B. Hickok 1869 on the backstrap. He wore his pistols butt forward in a belt or a sash when wearing city clothes or buckskins, and seldom used holsters. He drew the pistols using a reverse twist or cavalry draw. At the time of his death, Hickok was wearing a Smith & Wesson Model 2, a newly released 5-shot single action with a 6-inch barrel, blued finish with varnished rosewood grips. Wild Bill is one of the more famous figures of the Old West. We can see how he dressed and see his very distinct features because there are many photos of James Butler Hickok. There are even a few photos that were taken in Deadwood with him and some of his friends. A lot of actors have played the part of Wild Bill in movies and TV shows. William S. Hart, Gary Cooper, Bill Elliott, Guy Madison, Richard Dix, Robert Wilkie, and Jeff Bridges, just to name a few. When the Old West is referenced, James Butler Hickok is one of the first people that come to mind. There's countless legends, stories, books, articles about him. But one thing about Hickok that seems for certain, if he was threatened or felt threatened, he would immediately pull his pistols and he would shoot to kill. My name's Bob Terry. We want to thank you for joining us here for the Old West. We hope you'll join us again here next time. Have a great day.